I want to go over this text a little slowly, and I'm going to raise some questions that I may not address, but I want to raise them just so you can maybe get to see what I'm thinking as I look at this text, and maybe it'd be something that you're thinking as well as you look at it. I also want to just read through it slowly, see what we notice, raise some questions, and see what we can be blessed by this morning. So this is Luke chapter 8, verses 26 through 39. I'm going to read through it again, and we'll kind of stop every couple of moments. So they sailed to the region of Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. And when he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me." Take a note at that point. I beg you, don't torture me. For Jesus had commanded the impure spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. So there's a lot going on here in this first section. And I think the way that the demon possessed man responds to Jesus is very interesting. When Jesus commands the impure spirit to come out of the man, the demon possessed man begs Jesus not to torture him. That's a little interesting, isn't it? And he does this after Jesus commands him to be healed. So impure spirit come out, and he is tortured by that. So as I see that, I can't help but to wonder, was this healing torture to him? Was receiving healing torture? And furthermore, what might this mean for the healing that we might receive? Because I've never met a demon possessed person or an individual. Maybe you have. You might think some of our politicians are, but in a serious way, I never met. I've never met a demon possessed person. But I've met people that were caught up in things, caught up in addictions, caught up in things that they that had power over them. And maybe they wanted to get sober and get clean from something, and it was hard. It was torture. It's torture to get healing. So I think we might be seeing a little bit of this in this text. Maybe that can help us understand what's happening to this demon possessed man. Because in a sense, healing, which is something that is good, something that we all want, we all need, but it's something that can be painful and torturing in some ways. So furthermore, in verse 30, Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And I did some looking, and this seems to be the only question like that in the scripture. I don't know if maybe there's we give that question to God, like, God, no, who are you? But God does not, Jesus does not give that question to others, which is something interesting. Only in this event do we see that. So what is up with that? What is up with that question? What is your name? And I think the question might have reflect the ancient idea that if you can name something, you can tame it. If you can name the supernatural power, you have the power to take advantage of it or address it, which is, I think, another reality that still might be true for us today. If we can name the issue, then we have something, some words to address the issue. If we have the words to talk about something, this is how we can address it. Of course, those words and those names they only help so much. They don't only take us so far. They're helpful till they're not. But it can be a beginning of addressing this issue. So Jesus asked the demon possessed man, "What is your name?" to address the issue of what's going on within him. So the man replied in verse 30, "Legion," because many demons had gone into him. And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. And the abyss here, I think, is referring to the place where bad spirits are confined. So this is a place where I think we read about in Revelation where Satan and his angels were meant to be. And I think it's interesting that the man begs repeatedly not to go into the abyss. But then we see in verse 32 where he ends up going. A large herd of pigs were feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he gave them permission. When the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. So don't send me into the abyss. Send me into the pigs, and then I'll go off the cliff and get drowned. That sounds like the same destination for me. The abyss and this. So that's odd. But I think as we go further, we might be able to address that perplexing thing. And there's two things in these couple of verses that are really odd. Jesus, first of all, he accepts the requests of the demons. They say, "Can we be sent here?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, sure." And then he not only that, but the pigs are I mean, the demons are asked to go into the pigs, and the pigs are drowned, and they seem to go to the same place that you might call the abyss. So it's like, what is happening here? There are some things happening that are odd. And then in verse 34, when those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. The people went out to see what happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from where the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told people how the demon possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them because they were overcome with fear. So he got into the boat and left. Jesus is he's accepting a lot of requests. When they say leave, he's okay. I'm leaving. He leaves. But my question is, why are they so afraid? Why are they afraid? And why do they ask Jesus to leave? And why don't they rejoice about this man being healed? This is not the first time that we see an odd response to a healing, but why this response in particular? So let's keep going, and we'll get back to that question. So the man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him. So the demon he he goes from begging Jesus to heal him, or I'm sorry, not to heal him. In the beginning, he says, "Don't torture me. I beg you, Jesus." And now he's begging Jesus to leave the town with him. Isn't that interesting? And I think that's what healing does. You go from maybe you're tortured by the healing, but once you receive that healing, you want to go wherever the source of that healing was. And he found it in Jesus. So he went from saying, "Please don't do that to me, don't heal me," to, "Hey, let me follow you." But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. There's a switch there. Jesus says, "Tell them how much God has done." And then the man goes and tell how much Jesus has done. And there are a couple ways we can read that. But maybe we can say that, hey, there's like a hint that we're getting from the gospel writer that maybe Jesus is God. Maybe we're getting that hint. Maybe we can say that. Um, but I think it might be that, well, first of all, Jesus says, tell them how much God has done, because they just pushed Jesus away. They said, "Get out of here, Jesus. We're afraid of what you're doing." So it might be significant that Jesus is saying, tell God, give God the credit. Because maybe in this situation, Jesus was a stumbling block. And in this context, which is something interesting to think about. And not just that, they probably, maybe Jesus needed to give God the credit because of all of these questions that were coming up and all this fear that was coming up because of the people's response. But of course, this is all speculation. So back to these questions that are raised. And there are two big ones that are coming to me. And the first is, why is the town afraid of the man's healing? And why do they ask Jesus to leave? So I think the town was afraid of the man's healing because it meant that they had to change. Because this man received some type of healing and transformation and change, that meant that they had to change. And on one level, what I mean by that is, when something happens, when someone in your community makes a change, you have to change. There's some shift that you have to make, because you can't engage with this individual like you engaged with the individual before, which means you have to shift. I mean, a good example of this is just seeing the maturity of children. You can't talk to a child like a teenager, right? It's two different communication styles, right? And I think that there's something similar that's happening here, and maybe there's a fear that, hey, we can't we can't treat the man like we used to treat the man. We can't push the man away like maybe we used to push the man away. And one writer said about this text that the people were more afraid of a free man than a possessed man. Like, think about that. They were more afraid of a free man, a healed man, than they were of a possessed man. And maybe there's something there. When you cannot accept change, freedom will always be more scary than bondage. But when you're accepting of change, maybe freedom is something that you can welcome. So a question that this raises for me personally is, am I allowing the people around me to change? Am I allowing them to heal? Or am I so concerned about keeping things as they are that I contribute to their bondage? As I think about even my own family dynamics, I've had some struggles with like my grandpa, for instance. He's a cool guy, drives cars and all that. Uh, but he sees me as a 7-year old. Right, he doesn't see me as a 29-year-old with a wife, right? And the same thing is similar with my dad. And I think part of that's because we haven't spent a lot of time together, and because of that, they see me as the same boy that was excited about the cars, excited about all that, but I'm 29 now, right? Things change, and I think when that happens, there could be some friction because there's some friction between who I am, and who they think I am, or who they think I should be. And maybe you can relate to something like that. Maybe that's a family dynamic that you have experienced. And if you need somebody to vent about that, I'll be happy to vent with you. So we're addressing this question a little bit about why the town was afraid. So I think it's because of change. There was some type of change that was happening. So why does Jesus ask why did they ask Jesus to leave the town? And why push Jesus away? So Jesus, I think, was asked to leave because he came to the town and started making some mysterious changes. Jesus was the source of the change. So of course you're pushing Jesus away because if you don't want the change, you just push away the guy that's coming in here to make the change. So he was showing his power over demons while also at the same time, some might understand this as damaging the property of the town. Um, these are Gentiles. They had pigs. They were raising pigs. So if you're sending the demons into the pigs and the pigs are going off and dying, you just made some economic friction in there. You you made some trouble. So on one level, this is what Jesus is doing as well. And we can break that down more. So there's a loss of valuable livestock that is threatening to this community and their livelihood. So of course there's like, oh, what are you doing? Get out of here. You're threatening what we're trying to hold together here. There also might be some spiritual shock. Jesus and his supernatural authority is provoking fear of what's going to come next. Okay, he's healing the demon possessed man. What's next? What is he going to do next? And of course, what I think is the main thing is the resistance to change. They preferred their familiar world, even if it was broken, over the uncertainty of the transformation that was happening. They wanted what they knew versus what could be. So maybe there were some misplaced priorities with that fear being held up higher than maybe the healed person, the healed man in front of them. So a question that I have in light of this text, in light of what I'm noticing, and maybe what you're noticing in the text too, is what might it mean today to fully welcome Jesus, even when his presence leads us into unfamiliar territory? And the truth is, we're always in unfamiliar territory. This is the truth. Right, but we're not always maybe acknowledging that. Of course, we can reject it, right? There's all types of things that we can. There's ways we can respond to the change. But what might happen if we accept it? How might our lives be different if we can accept the changes that are happening around us? So my prayer is that God may grant us the courage to stay open to what could be, even if it scares us. And hear me here, even if it scares the hell out of us. And what I mean by that is the demon possessed man has some hell within him. And now the hell is out, and that has raised hell within the community. So can we, just like the demon possessed man, be open to what could be open to healing? Because we're all in need of healing. So may God heal us all.